Hey guys, tonight we're taking a deep dive into the scorching sands and towering temples of ancient Egypt. You know, the land of pyramids, mummies, and all that mysterious grandeur. But instead of focusing on the awe inspiring achievements, we're going to dim the lights and quietly explore the other side of the royal coin, why being a pharaoh of Egypt often sucked. And trust me, if you think being in charge means an easy life, you're about to get a serious reality check. You might even find yourself strangely grateful for your own cozy bed after this. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, maybe share where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine, for a moment, that you are the pharaoh. Not just any ruler, mind you, but the living incarnation of a god on earth. From the moment you wake, the very air around you hums with an immense, almost suffocating expectation. You are not simply a king. You are Horus or Ra or Amun Ra, walking among mortals, responsible for the cosmic balance of Ma'at truth, order, and justice. This isn't just a fancy title, it's a divine burden, a heavy crown that weighs far more than gold. Every sunrise, every flood of the Nile, every bountiful harvest or devastating famine is laid squarely on your shoulders. You are the direct link between the mortal world and the divine. And if things go wrong, it's ultimately your fault. Talk about performance pressure, right? It's like being the CEO of a global company, but if sales drop, the entire universe blames you personally. You wake, not to a quiet morning, but to a meticulously orchestrated ritual. Servants, priests, and advisors are already a silent swarm around you, each with a specific duty to fulfill in preparing the living God for his day. You are bathed, perfumed, and dressed in elaborate, often heavy, regalia that symbolizes your divine authority. Every movement is prescribed, every gesture laden with meaning. There's no hitting the snooze button, no grabbing a quick coffee. Your entire existence is a public performance, a constant manifestation of divine power. You're always on, always observed, always expected to embody perfection. It's a bit like being a celebrity who can never leave their role, even when they're just trying to tie their sandals. The concept of ma'at permeated every aspect of a pharaoh's rule. You weren't just supposed to rule, you were supposed to maintain cosmic order. This meant ensuring justice for your people, upholding the laws, defending the borders, and, critically, performing the countless rituals necessary to keep the gods appeased and the Nile flowing. If the Nile didn't flood, or if the harvest failed, it wasn't just bad luck. It could be seen as a sign of your failing to uphold Ma'at, a profound spiritual and political crisis that reflected directly on your divinity. Imagine being solely responsible for the weather, the economy, and the entire moral fabric of society. That's a workload that makes a modern CEO's schedule look like a vacation. This divine pressure manifested in endless ceremonial duties. Every festival, every temple dedication, every major state event required your presence, your participation, and your precise adherence to millennia old rituals. You might spend hours making offerings to various deities, reciting ancient prayers, or symbolically sowing the first seeds of a new harvest. These weren't optional appearances. They were fundamental acts of kingship, vital for the spiritual well being of the entire land. And remember, you had to look the part, serene, powerful, utterly divine, even if you were bored, tired, or had a raging headache from all the incense. It's like being the star of an endless play where you can never forget a line. and the audience consists of millions who believe you're literally a god. The sheer scale of the bureaucracy and the responsibility resting on your shoulders would be overwhelming. You were at the apex of a complex administrative system, overseeing vast agricultural networks, massive building projects like, you know, pyramids, military campaigns, and diplomatic relations with neighboring empires, even with a vast army of scribes, viziers, and officials. The ultimate responsibility for every major decision, every success, and every failure fell to you. You were the ultimate decision maker. The buck stopped with the pharaoh. No delegation could truly alleviate that fundamental weight. One common historical truth about being a pharaoh is the constant threat of disease and illness. Despite their divine status, pharaohs were flesh and blood, living in a world without modern medicine, sanitation, or even a basic understanding of germ theory. Many pharaohs suffered from a variety of ailments, ranging from dental problems, a common issue due to sand in their bread, to parasitic infections from the Nile. Diseases like tuberculosis, malaria, and smallpox were rampant, and a royal body, for all its divinity, was just as susceptible as any commoner. Imagine being worshipped as a god, yet suffering from a persistent toothache or debilitating intestinal parasites. It truly grounds the divine in the very human. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail is the potential for pharaohs to suffer from various genetic disorders due to the pervasive practice of incestuous marriage within the royal family. To maintain the purity of the divine bloodline, pharaohs often married their sisters, half sisters, or even daughters. While intended to reinforce their divine status, this practice led to an increased risk of birth defects, weakened immune systems, and other debilitating conditions. King Tutankhamun, for example, is believed to have suffered from numerous ailments, including a crippling bone disease, likely exacerbated by the intermarriage of his parents. It's a sobering thought. The very attempt to achieve divine perfection often led to significant physical imperfections. Historians still widely debate the exact extent of these genetic issues across different royal lines, but the evidence from mummified remains is compelling. The pressure to produce a male heir was another immense burden. The continuity of the dynasty depended on it, and failure to produce a son could lead to political instability, succession crises, and immense personal anxiety for the pharaoh and his queen. While pharaohs often had multiple wives and concubines to maximize their chances, the biological reality meant that it was never a guarantee. And if the royal line faltered, the blame, once again, would fall squarely on the pharaoh's divine shoulders. Imagine the pressure of knowing your entire kingdom's future hinges on your reproductive success. Beyond their daily rituals, pharaohs faced the constant looming shadow of their own mortality. Despite being living gods, they knew their earthly reign was finite, and what came after was even more demanding, a meticulously planned and incredibly expensive journey into the afterlife, designed to ensure their eternal rule as fully resurrected deities. This involved the construction of elaborate tombs, the painstaking process of mummification, and the preparation of vast quantities of grave goods. This wasn't something you could just delegate entirely. The pharaoh himself had to make crucial decisions about his eternal abode, a literal blueprint for his divine future. It's like planning your entire retirement, except your retirement home is a multi-million dollar pyramid, and you have to personally oversee every brick. The sheer loneliness of being a pharaoh must have been immense, surrounded by sycophants, servants, and officials. True companionship and genuine connection would have been rare. Every relationship was colored by your divine status, your power, and the expectations that came with it. Even your family members were often entangled in the political dance for power and influence. It's the ultimate isolation, admired, worshipped, feared, but rarely truly known. You're at the top, but it's a very lonely view. Lee. So, As your thoughts drift and your eyelids grow heavy, consider the immense, almost unbearable weight of the Pharaoh's crown. Their lives were a constant performance, burdened by divine expectations, physical ailments, and the relentless demands of a kingdom. It's a stark reminder that even the most powerful individuals in history often lived lives of profound difficulty, a complexity that goes far beyond the glittering artifacts we see in museums. Let's gently re enter the sun drenched yet demanding world of ancient Egypt and the life of a pharaoh. If chapter 1 illuminated the sheer weight of their divine burden, tonight we'll delve into the relentless rhythm of their existence, ritual, and routine. Endless ceremonial drudgery. You might imagine a pharaoh's life as one of leisure and indulgence, but the reality was a meticulously choreographed performance, day in and day out. Imagine yourself as the pharaoh, and the sun is just beginning to cast its golden rays over the Nile. Your day doesn't begin with a leisurely stretch, but with a series of highly formalized purification rituals. You're cleansed, anointed with sacred oils, and draped in the finest linen. This isn't just about hygiene, it's about preparing the divine body to interact with the world, ensuring you are ritually pure enough to commune with the gods and maintain ma'at. Every splash of water, every waft of incense is imbued with profound religious significance. It's like having to perform an elaborate, sacred dance just to get out of bed in the morning. And don't even think about skipping a step. The fate of the universe might depend on it. Your public appearances were not spontaneous events, but carefully staged performances. You might preside over court sessions, listening to petitions and dispensing justice. But even these seemingly administrative duties were wrapped in ritual. You'd sit on your elaborate throne, surrounded by symbols of your power, your every utterance carrying the weight of divine decree. There was no casual banter, no off the cuff remark. Every word was measured, every glance controlled, to project an image of infallible wisdom and unwavering authority. It's a lot like perpetually being on live television, where every single second is scrutinized for perfection. The very temples that define ancient Egypt were, in many ways, an extension of your daily routine. As the chief priest of every cult in the land, you were expected to perform daily offerings and rites to countless gods. While viceroys and ordinary priests handled most of these duties in your name, on important festival days or for critical state rituals, your personal presence was absolutely essential. You would enter the inner sanctums, perform intricate gestures, recite ancient hymns, and make offerings of food, drink, and incense to the divine statues. These weren't quick prayers. These were hours long, deeply immersive, and physically demanding ceremonies, often performed in dimly lit incense filled chambers. Imagine being the lead actor in a never ending religious play, and the stage is a vast, echoing temple. One common historical truth about a pharaoh's routine was their relentless focus on temple building and maintenance. As the earthly embodiment of the gods, it was your sacred duty to build and restore temples across the land, ensuring proper homes for the deities and places for their worship. This wasn't just an architectural project, it was a spiritual imperative. You would personally lay the foundation stone, oversee the carving of immense statues, and dedicate new sanctuaries. This involved extensive travel throughout your kingdom, inspecting construction sites, meeting with architects and artisans, all while maintaining your divine composure. It's like being a CEO whose main job is to constantly build and renovate grand cathedrals indefinitely. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail is the pharaoh's role in agricultural rituals. Despite being a god, you were directly responsible for the fertility of the land. Most crucially, the annual flooding of the Nile. While you couldn't actually control the river, You performed elaborate rituals and ceremonies designed to appease Happy, the god of the Nile flood, and ensure its benevolent rise. You might symbolically cut the first furrow of a field, or participate in ceremonies releasing sacred waters. These were acts of profound symbolic importance, designed to reassure your people and validate your divine connection to the forces of nature. Imagine the anxiety as you watch the river levels, knowing your entire kingdom's survival hinges on a natural phenomenon you can only influence through ritual. Historians still widely debate the psychological impact of this immense responsibility on individual pharaohs, especially during periods of low floods. Your administrative duties, though supported by a vast bureaucracy, were also constant. You would receive reports from your viziers on justice, taxation, and provincial administration. You would issue decrees, appoint officials, and mediate disputes. This required a deep understanding of your kingdom's intricate workings, excellent memory, and the ability to make weighty decisions that affected millions of lives. And all of this had to be done with the serene, unhurried demeanor expected of a divine ruler. There's no hitting the panic button when things go sideways. You must project calm authority at all times. It's the ultimate test of your poker face. The pressure to constantly appear perfect and infallible was immense. You couldn't show weakness, fear, or even simple fatigue. Every portrait, every statue, every inscription depicted you as powerful, serene, and eternal. This required a relentless suppression of personal emotion and a constant performance of your divine role. Your true self, your human anxieties, had to be buried deep beneath layers of gold, linen, and sacred symbolism. It's like being perpetually trapped in a photo shoot, where every single angle must be absolutely flawless for all eternity. Even your meals were not simple affairs. They were often part of a wider ritual, with specific foods prepared in specific ways and served according to strict protocols. You couldn't just grab a sandwich. Every bite was a part of maintaining your divine purity and strength. And while ancient Egyptian cuisine had its delicacies, the very act of eating became another controlled performance. This endless cycle of ritual and routine was designed to reinforce your divine authority and the stability of the kingdom. But for the pharaoh themselves, it must have been an isolating and emotionally draining existence. There was little room for spontaneity, personal desires, or even genuine relaxation. Your life was a script, meticulously written by millennia of tradition, and you were the lead actor, performing for gods and mortals alike. It's the ultimate golden cage, magnificent in its appearance, but unyielding in its demands. So, as you slowly drift deeper into the quiet stillness of your night, consider the pharaoh's life of relentless ceremonial drudgery. Beyond the gleaming gold and towering monuments lay a daily existence dictated by ancient rituals, sacred duties, and the unwavering expectation of divine perfection. It's a powerful reminder that even at the pinnacle of power, life can be a demanding, structured performance, leaving little room for the simple joys of personal freedom. Let's gently re enter the ancient world of the pharaohs, that land of colossal monuments and eternal aspirations. If our last chapter revealed the relentless drumbeat of their daily rituals, tonight we'll delve into the single most defining and perhaps most oppressive demand of their reign, the weight of immortality, pyramid schemes, and beyond. You might think building a magnificent tomb sounds impressive, but for a pharaoh, it was a lifelong, incredibly stressful, and astronomically expensive endeavor. Imagine being born into a role where your primary life's work isn't just about ruling the living, but about meticulously planning your journey into the afterlife. From the moment you ascend the throne, the clock starts ticking on your eternal destiny. Your most significant project, often spanning decades, isn't a new city or a grand temple for the gods. It's your tomb, your eternal home, designed to ensure your successful resurrection and everlasting rule as a fully fledged deity. This wasn't some optional retirement plan, it was the ultimate, non negotiable obligation of your pharaohhood. It's like having to build your own personal interstellar spacecraft from scratch, knowing your eternal soul depends on its flawless construction. And you have to do it while running the country. The sheer scale of these projects is mind boggling. Think of the pyramids of the Old Kingdom. These weren't just big piles of rocks, they were feats of engineering, logistics, and human labor almost incomprehensible even today. As the pharaoh, you were ultimately responsible for commissioning the design, mobilizing the workforce, which included skilled craftsmen, architects, and vast numbers of conscripted laborers during the Nile's flood season, quarrying the stone from distant locations, and transporting those enormous blocks across the desert and river. The resources diverted for these monumental structures were immense: vast quantities of food, tools, and human effort that could have been used for other purposes. It's a bit like deciding to build the Hoover Dam, the Great Wall of China, and the entire interstate highway system, all just for your personal mausoleum. This wasn't just about building a structure, it was about creating a cosmic machine for your transition to divinity. Every chamber, every shaft, every relief carving within your tomb had a precise ritualistic purpose designed to protect your mummified body, house your vital possessions, and guide your care and bar your soul components safely through the perilous underworld. You couldn't just trust this to subordinates. You had to ensure everything was perfect, down to the last hieroglyph. This required constant supervision, endless consultations with priests and architects, and probably a fair bit of anxiety over whether everything would actually work as intended. A common historical truth is that the success of a pharaoh's eternal journey was deeply intertwined with the grandeur and security of their tomb. A magnificent tomb, filled with lavish grave goods, reflected not only the pharaoh's earthly power but also their divine favor and ability to command resources. Conversely, a modest or unfinished tomb might suggest a troubled reign or a diminished afterlife. This created immense pressure to outdo your predecessors, to build bigger, more elaborate, and more secure resting places, leading to an architectural arms race that lasted for centuries. It's the ultimate game of keeping up with the Joneses, except the Joneses are your deified ancestors, and the stakes are literally eternal. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail is the constant fear of tomb robbery. Despite the immense effort and resources poured into securing their eternal resting places, ancient Egyptian tombs were notoriously susceptible to looting. As pharaoh, you were well aware of this threat. Measures were taken to deter robbers, hidden passages, false walls, massive granite portcullises, and even curses inscribed on the walls. Yet, the lure of unimaginable riches often proved too strong. Imagine spending your entire life and your kingdom's wealth on building an impregnable fortress for your afterlife, only to know, deep down, that it might be plundered mere decades after your death. That's a truly unsettling thought for an eternal god. Historians still widely debate the extent to which tomb robbery was an organized criminal enterprise versus opportunistic acts by disgruntled workers or locals. The pressure to start building your tomb immediately upon ascending the throne was immense. An unfinished tomb at the time of your death was a disaster, jeopardizing your eternal journey and reflecting poorly on your reign. This meant that pharaohs spent much of their rule in a perpetual state of construction, overseeing vast workforces and managing immense supply chains. Every year that passed without significant progress on their eternal home was another year of anxiety. It's like having a looming deadline for a project that literally lasts your entire adult life. Beyond the pyramids, later pharaohs shifted to elaborate rock cut tombs in places like the Valley of the Kings. While less visible, these were no less demanding. Carving deep into solid rock required immense skill, time, and labor. The interiors were then meticulously plastered and painted with intricate scenes depicting the pharaoh's journey through the underworld, magical spells, and interactions with deities. This artistic and religious undertaking was just as crucial as the physical construction, ensuring the spiritual efficacy of the tomb. Imagine the meticulous planning for thousands of square feet of wall paintings, each stroke carrying sacred meaning. The logistics involved in provisioning these massive workforces, maintaining tools, and managing the specialized artisans were a monumental task in themselves. You were not just building a tomb, you were running an entire self sufficient industry dedicated to your afterlife. This diverted immense national resources that could have been used for social programs, infrastructure for the living, or even military expansion. The pharaoh's obsession with their eternal rest often came at a significant cost to the present day kingdom. So, as you slowly drift into dreams, consider the immense weight of immortality that burdened every pharaoh. Their lives were a relentless race against time, a colossal undertaking to secure their divine future, constantly overshadowed by the fear of an unfinished tomb or an eternity plundered. It's a powerful reminder that even the most powerful individuals face their own unique pressures, and for the pharaohs, ensuring a comfortable afterlife was literally a lifelong, incredibly stressful job. Let's gently slip back into the opulent, yet incredibly dangerous, world of ancient Egypt, focusing once more on the life of a pharaoh. If we've felt the crushing weight of their eternal duties, tonight we'll illuminate the more immediate, insidious threats lurking just behind the gilded walls of the palace intrigue, daggers in the shadows. Being a divine ruler didn't grant immunity from human ambition, jealousy, and outright betrayal. Imagine yourself, the pharaoh, reclining on a finely carved chaise lounge after a long day of rituals and decrees. The palace seems quiet, peaceful, but beneath the surface, currents of ambition and resentment are always swirling. Your closest advisors, your most trusted servants, even members of your own family, could be secretly plotting your downfall. This wasn't some dramatic plot from a Hollywood movie. It was a constant, terrifying reality of ancient Egyptian kingship. The higher you are, the harder you fall. And the more people want to give you that push. It's like being the CEO of a huge corporation, but every single board member, and even your personal assistant, might be secretly trying to take your job, or worse. Assassination attempts were a very real and persistent threat to pharaohs. While divine in theory, they were mortal in practice, and a well placed dagger or a poisoned cup could end a reign and a life in an instant. The motives varied: disgruntled officials, ambitious relatives, rival factions seeking to place their own candidate on the throne, or even foreign powers attempting to destabilize the kingdom. The palace was teeming with people servants, priests, bodyguards, any of whom could potentially be bribed, coerced, or ideologically motivated to participate in a plot. Every meal, every private meeting, every walk through a dimly lit corridor carried an unspoken risk. Imagine trying to relax, knowing that at any moment, the person serving your wine might be delivering your demise. The most insidious threats often came from within the royal family itself: brothers, uncles, queens, and even sons could harbor ambitions for the throne. Royal succession, while generally hereditary, was not always a smooth process, particularly if a pharaoh had multiple wives and concubines, each vying for her son to be named heir. This created a fertile ground for intense rivalries, backstabbing, and open rebellion. A queen, desperate to secure her son's future, might conspire to remove a rival prince or even the pharaoh himself if he was seen as an impediment. It's a family drama turned deadly, where the stakes are an entire kingdom. A common historical truth is that the practice of co regency, where a pharaoh would rule alongside his chosen successor, was sometimes employed as a strategy to ensure a smooth transition and deter plots. However, even this wasn't foolproof. The presence of two pharaohs could also create new points of friction, with ambitious junior pharaohs sometimes becoming impatient for full power. This delicate balance required immense trust and careful management, which was often lacking in the cutthroat environment of the court. Historians still debate the effectiveness of co regency in preventing plots versus merely delaying them. A fascinating, yet often overlooked detail is the presence of professional poisoners or practitioners of black magic within royal courts, sometimes even hired by those seeking to remove a pharaoh. While hard evidence is scarce and often debated, ancient texts and later folklore hint at fears of subtle, untraceable methods of assassination. A pharaoh, constantly surrounded by food and drink prepared by others, lived with a latent anxiety about what might secretly be added to his daily sustenance. It's like having to trust that every single meal you eat is not only delicious, but also completely non lethal, every single day, for decades. The harem conspiracy against Rameses III is a classic example of palace intrigue turning deadly. This plot, involving one of his secondary wives, Tiye, and her son, Pentawere, alongside a network of disgruntled officials and harem women, aimed to assassinate the pharaoh and place Pentawere on the throne. While Rameses III was indeed killed, the plot ultimately failed to install Pentawere, and many conspirators faced brutal punishments. The details, pieced together from surviving court documents, reveal the chilling reality of betrayal from the very heart of the royal household. This wasn't just a political struggle, it was a deeply personal betrayal by those closest to him. Beyond outright assassination, pharaohs faced constant political maneuvering and psychological warfare. Ministers might subtly undermine rivals, spread rumors, or intentionally misinform the pharaoh to achieve their own ends. Court favorites could rise and fall with alarming speed, their fortunes depending entirely on their ability to navigate this treacherous landscape. As the pharaoh, you had to be exceptionally shrewd, discerning true loyalty from cunning ambition, and separating genuine advice from self serving counsel. It's like being trapped in a never ending game of Among Us, where every single person around you could be the imposter, and the stakes are your life and your kingdom. The very system of rule, with a single absolute authority figure, often concentrated resentments and ambitions onto the pharaoh. If things went wrong, a bad harvest, a lost battle, unpopular decrees, public discontent could simmer, and powerful individuals might exploit it to challenge your rule. This meant a pharaoh had to be constantly vigilant, maintaining strong intelligence networks and a loyal personal guard to sniff out and neutralize threats before they escalated. Your sleep, already burdened by divine responsibility, would be further disturbed by the silent fear of betrayal. So, as you slowly drift into dreams, consider the perilous existence of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. Even amidst their divine splendor, beneath the glittering crowns and grand ceremonies lay a constant, unsettling reality of palace intrigue, where daggers could lurk in the shadows and betrayal could come from the most trusted of hands. It's a sobering reminder that power, no matter how absolute or divine, rarely comes without its chilling costs. Let's gently return to the hot, dry air of ancient Egypt and the life of a pharaoh. If we've just navigated the treacherous currents of palace intrigue, tonight we'll explore an even more personal and perhaps more relatable challenge faced by these divine rulers: disease and decay, a royal body's frailty. Despite their godlike status and immense wealth, Pharaohs were profoundly human, susceptible to the same aches, pains, and fatal illnesses that plagued their subjects. Imagine yourself, the mighty Pharaoh, revered as a living deity, yet waking up with a throbbing toothache or a persistent cough in a world without modern medicine, antibiotics, or even a clear understanding of basic hygiene. Even seemingly minor ailments could escalate into debilitating, life threatening conditions. Your royal physicians, for all their knowledge of herbs and spells, operated within severe limitations, leaving you, the divine ruler, surprisingly vulnerable to the relentless onslaught of disease. It's like being the most powerful person on earth, but your body decided it didn't get the memo about your divinity, and it's going to ache just like everyone else's. One of the most common and debilitating issues for pharaohs was dental disease. The ancient Egyptian diet, while rich in grains, often contained significant amounts of sand and grit from the milling process. This abrasive diet led to severe tooth wear, abscesses, and infections. Mummified remains frequently show evidence of extensively worn teeth, impacted wisdom teeth, and painful dental pathologies. Imagine trying to rule a kingdom, lead armies, and perform complex rituals while suffering from chronic, excruciating tooth pain. Even the divine can't escape the agony of a molar rebellion. Beyond dental woes, pharaohs were susceptible to a host of infectious diseases. Malaria, carried by mosquitoes from the abundant Nile, was endemic and likely caused recurrent fevers and debilitating weakness. Tuberculosis, a respiratory disease, has also been identified in royal mummies, leading to chronic coughs and fatigue. Other parasitic infections, dysentery from contaminated water, and viral illnesses would have swept through the population, including the palace, with devastating frequency. While their living conditions might have been better than the average peasants, the crowded palace environment and lack of understanding about disease transmission meant they were far from immune. It's like living in a luxurious palace that occasionally turns into a giant petri dish. A fascinating, yet often disturbing, detail revealed by modern scientific analysis of royal mummies is the presence of various genetic conditions and physical deformities, likely exacerbated by the widespread practice of incestuous marriage within the royal family. We touched on this briefly, but it bears repeating. For example, King Tutankhamun's mummy has shown evidence of a severe clubfoot, a debilitating bone disorder, choler disease, and possibly epilepsy, all of which would have severely impacted his mobility and daily comfort. Akhenaten, his presumed father, is depicted with a highly unusual, feminized body shape, leading to theories of various genetic syndromes. While these physical traits were sometimes stylized in art, the underlying conditions would have been very real and profoundly affected their quality of life. Imagine being worshipped as physically perfect, while privately enduring chronic pain and significant physical limitations. Historians still widely debate the exact diagnosis for many pharaohs based on mummified remains, but the evidence of inherited conditions is compelling. The practice of medicine in ancient Egypt, while advanced for its time, was a blend of practical remedies, magical spells, and religious invocations. Royal physicians had knowledge of various herbs, bandages, and even some surgical procedures. However, their understanding of internal anatomy and the true causes of disease was limited. Treatments often involved rituals, amulets, and prayers to deities like Sekhmet, the goddess of healing and plague. As a pharaoh, you would receive the best available medical care, but that care was a far cry from what we understand today. It's like getting the VIP treatment, but the VIP treatment consists of a highly educated guest and a prayer. Life expectancy for pharaohs was often shorter than one might expect given their pampered existence. While some lived to old age, many died relatively young due to the aforementioned diseases. Or sometimes, as we discussed, due to assassination. The constant stress of ruling, the demands of ritual, and the pervasive threat of illness likely took a significant toll on their bodies. Their divine status couldn't prevent their human decay. The process of mummification, while a testament to their belief in the afterlife, was also a very physical and invasive process performed on their deceased bodies. Imagine your body being carefully prepared, organs removed, and then slowly dried over many weeks. This wasn't a pleasant thought for the living pharaoh, but a crucial step in ensuring their successful transition to divinity. The very act of preparing for this process must have been a constant, chilling reminder of their ultimate mortality. It's like booking your embalming appointment while you're still alive and kicking, just to make sure it's perfect. Even their diet, while rich, could contribute to health issues. While they avoided the sand in bread by having the finest milled grains, royal diets were often heavy in meat, beer, and honey, which could lead to conditions like gout or diabetes over time. Their access to abundant food didn't necessarily equate to a balanced or healthy diet by modern standards. So, as you drift deeper into the quiet stillness of your night, consider the profound human frailty that even the most divine pharaohs faced. Beneath the golden masks and the serene expressions lay bodies susceptible to common illnesses, dental pain, and genetic predispositions. It's a humbling reminder that regardless of power or prestige, the human body is a delicate vessel, and even a living God could not escape the universal realities of disease and decay. Let's gently return to the demanding world of ancient Egypt and the life of a pharaoh. If we've just explored the vulnerabilities of their divine bodies to disease, tonight we'll shift our focus outward to the relentless pressures of governing a vast empire and dealing with its neighbors' diplomatic dance, endless wars, and troubled peace. Being a pharaoh wasn't just about rituals and pyramids, it was about navigating a complex world filled with alliances, rivalries, and the constant threat of military conflict. Imagine yourself as the pharaoh, seated on your throne, not just receiving reports about the Nile's flood, but also grim dispatches from your border fortresses. Perhaps a nomadic tribe is raiding the western desert oases, or a powerful Hittite king in the north is asserting his dominance over your vital trade routes in Syria. Your divine title might grant you immense power within Egypt, but beyond your borders, you were a king among kings, constantly needing to assert your authority, protect your interests, and, often, wage war. It's like being the CEO of a major multinational corporation, but your quarterly earnings reports involve battle casualties and contested territories. The military leadership was an inescapable part of a pharaoh's role. While you had trusted generals and commanders, as the supreme commander-in-chief, the ultimate responsibility for military strategy, troop deployment, and the outcome of battles rested squarely on your shoulders. Many pharaohs, like Thutmose III or Ramesses, they personally led their armies into battle, enduring the hardships of campaigns, the heat of the desert, and the immediate dangers of the battlefield. This wasn't just a symbolic presence, it was often a grueling, physically demanding aspect of their reign. Imagine being revered as a god, yet having to strategize troop movements, inspect supply lines, and rally your soldiers under a scorching sun. It makes a corporate retreat look like a spa day. Maintaining control over conquered territories was an ongoing headache. From the rich gold mines of Nubia in the south to the strategic trade hubs of the Levant in the north, Egypt often controlled vast swathes of territory beyond its traditional borders. These regions were often restive, populated by diverse peoples with their own loyalties and ambitions. You, as pharaoh, had to constantly manage these distant provinces, sending loyal governors, collecting tribute, and suppressing rebellions with military force when necessary. This was a perpetual balancing act projecting strength without overextending your resources, and maintaining peace through a combination of diplomacy and deterrence. It's like trying to manage a sprawling international business empire, where some of your branch offices are constantly threatening to go rogue. A common historical truth is that diplomacy was as crucial as warfare. Pharaohs engaged in extensive correspondence with other major powers of the Near East, including the Hittites, Babylonians, and Mitanni. These interactions involved elaborate exchanges of gifts, marriage alliances, and treaties, all designed to maintain a delicate balance of power and ensure peace, or at least a temporary cessation of hostilities. You would receive lengthy letters, often filled with flowery language but subtle threats, and you had to interpret them, respond strategically, and constantly assess the true intentions of your royal peers. It's like a never ending, high stakes international poker game where the chips are entire kingdoms. A fascinating, yet often overlooked, detail is the pharaoh's personal involvement in hostage diplomacy to secure peace or loyalty from vassal states. It was common practice for the children of foreign rulers to be brought to the Egyptian court, to be educated and essentially held as royal hostages. While often treated well and educated in Egyptian ways, their presence ensured their parents' good behavior. As pharaoh, you would have to interact with these foreign princes and princesses, sometimes for years, forming relationships that were inherently political and fraught with tension. Imagine hosting the children of your rivals at your dinner table, knowing their presence is a guarantee against their parents' aggression. Historians still debate the true psychological impact of this practice on the hostage children themselves, and how it shaped future diplomatic relations. The demands of foreign policy were relentless. Every border skirmish, every trade dispute, every shifting alliance in the wider Near East directly impacted Egypt's security and prosperity. You couldn't simply ignore these external pressures. You had to react, strategize, and allocate vast resources to maintain your empire. This meant constant intelligence gathering, sending out spies and envoys, and making difficult decisions about when to negotiate and when to deploy military force. It's the ultimate strategic puzzle, played out on a global stage, with your kingdom as the grand prize. The construction of monumental border fortresses and defensive structures was another significant burden. From the massive fortresses along the southern Nile in Nubia to strategic outposts in the Sinai, pharaohs invested immense resources in securing their borders against incursions. These projects required not just stone and labor, but also ongoing garrisons of soldiers, logistical support, and constant vigilance. It was a perpetual arms race, ensuring Egypt remained strong in a volatile region. Imagine having to continuously fortify your borders, knowing that any lapse in vigilance could invite invasion. Even periods of peace were often just a strategic lull between conflicts. Treaties could be fragile, alliances temporary, and the ambition of neighboring empires ever present. A pharaoh rarely had the luxury of simply focusing on internal affairs. The external world was a constant, demanding presence. This put immense pressure on your military and diplomatic skills, requiring you to be both a skilled warrior and a shrewd negotiator. It's like having to constantly switch between being a football coach and a peace broker, with the fate of your nation on the line in both roles. So, as you slowly drift into dreams, consider the pharaoh's life as a relentless diplomatic dance, constantly threatened by war and strained peace. Beyond the serene images lay a ruler constantly engaged in high-stakes geopolitics, leading armies, negotiating treaties, and defending borders. It's a powerful reminder that even divine rule came with the very human and exhausting responsibilities of protecting a vast and powerful empire. Let's gently return to the demanding world of ancient Egypt and the life of a pharaoh. If we've just explored the external pressures of war and diplomacy, tonight we'll delve into an equally formidable, yet often less glamorous, challenge, economic headaches, famine, floods, and finances. Being a pharaoh wasn't just about wielding divine power, it was about the crushing responsibility of ensuring prosperity for millions, navigating the unpredictable forces of nature, and managing a vast, complex economy. Imagine yourself as the pharaoh, waking not to the scent of incense, but to the anxious reports of your viziers. The most critical, life sustaining factor in Egypt was, without a doubt, the annual flooding of the Nile River. Too little water meant drought, crop failure, and widespread famine. Too much water meant destructive floods that could wipe out villages, destroy infrastructure, and still ruin harvests. Your entire kingdom's economy, its very survival, hinged on this single, unpredictable, natural phenomenon. As the living God, you were ultimately held responsible for its benevolence. Imagine running a country where your GDP is entirely dependent on a capricious river, and your job is to keep it happy. That's a stress level a modern economist couldn't even comprehend. The management of agricultural resources was a constant, immense burden. You oversaw vast tracts of fertile land, from which the entire population was fed. This required meticulous record keeping, efficient taxation of grain, and careful redistribution of resources to ensure that everyone, from the lowliest peasant to the highest noble, had enough to eat. During lean years, when the Nile's flood was poor, the pressure to prevent mass starvation was immense. You would have to order the release of grain from royal granaries, implement emergency measures, and pray to the gods for intervention. The specter of famine, with its attendant social unrest and potential for rebellion, was a constant shadow over your reign. It's like being the head of a national food supply chain. But if you fail, millions starve, and they might blame you personally. The royal treasury was your ultimate financial instrument, and managing it was a complex task. You were responsible for collecting taxes, primarily in the form of grain, livestock, and labor, from across the kingdom. This revenue funded everything: the salaries of your officials and priests, the maintenance of temples, the provisioning of your army, and, of course, the construction of your magnificent tomb. You had to ensure a steady flow of resources, prevent corruption within the tax collection system, and balance the books to avoid financial crises. A depleted treasury could weaken your authority, cripple your military, and even invite foreign invasion. It's a lot like managing the national budget, but without the benefit of a central bank, and your personal assets are inextricably linked to the state's. A common historical truth is that trade and international relations also played a significant role in the pharaoh's economic responsibilities. Egypt engaged in extensive trade with neighboring regions, importing valuable commodities like timber, copper, and exotic luxuries, and exporting grain, linen, and manufactured goods. You had to secure these trade routes, negotiate favorable agreements with foreign rulers, and occasionally send out expeditions to acquire rare resources. These ventures were expensive and risky, but vital for maintaining Egypt's prosperity and access to strategic materials. Imagine being the chief negotiator for all international trade deals, where the failure of one deal could cripple your national defense. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail is the pharaoh's involvement in large-scale mining and quarrying operations. Beyond the famous stone quarries for pyramids and temples, Egypt had rich gold mines, particularly in Nubia. As pharaoh, you were ultimately responsible for organizing and overseeing these massive operations, which involved thousands of laborers, engineers, and armed guards. The extraction of gold was crucial for funding your lavish court, maintaining your military, and engaging in international diplomacy. These were often dangerous, remote operations, requiring significant logistical effort to provision workers and transport the precious metals back to the royal treasury. It's like being the CEO of a massive mining conglomerate, but instead of quarterly reports, you get reports about slave revolts and collapsed tunnels. Historians still widely debate the precise working conditions and social organization of these mining operations across different dynasties. The constant need to fund ambitious building projects, particularly your own tomb, and various temples, was a perpetual drain on the national finances. While these projects provided employment and demonstrated your piety, they also consumed immense resources that could have been used elsewhere. You had to balance the spiritual imperative of monument building with the practical needs of your living subjects. This was a continuous tightrope walk, often forcing difficult choices about resource allocation. Imagine having to decide between building a new hospital and adding another grand hall to your eternally prepared tomb. Maintaining public order and justice also had an economic dimension. A stable society, free from widespread crime and internal strife, was essential for economic productivity. You, as Pharaoh, were the ultimate arbiter of justice, responsible for upholding Ma'at through fair laws and swift judgments. A just and orderly society encouraged trade, ensured agricultural output, and prevented the kind of unrest that could disrupt the economic lifeblood of the kingdom. Your reputation for justice was not just moral, but also an economic asset. The economic burdens extended even to ceremonial roles, lavish festivals, elaborate offerings to the gods, and grand processions all required significant financial outlay from the royal treasury. While these were vital for maintaining your divine image and appeasing the deities, they were also costly affairs that had to be carefully budgeted for. It's the ultimate combination of spiritual duty and financial management. So, as you slowly drift into dreams, consider the immense economic headaches that plagued the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. Beyond the grandeur and divine titles lay a ruler constantly battling the unpredictable forces of nature, managing a vast economy, and ensuring the prosperity of millions. It's a powerful reminder that even the most exalted positions come with very real, very stressful, and often overwhelming responsibilities that could make or break an entire civilization. Let's gently return to the demanding world of ancient Egypt and the life of a pharaoh. If we've just explored the immense economic burdens they carried, tonight we'll step into a more personal and perhaps surprisingly relatable aspect of their daily lives, the royal diet. Not always so sweet. You might imagine a pharaoh feasting on endless delicacies, but their privileged diet often came with its own set of significant health problems and hidden discomforts. Imagine yourself, the mighty pharaoh, seated at the lavish banquet table laden with roasted meats, fresh bread, and sweet fruits. You have access to the finest foods the kingdom can offer. Yet, this abundance, combined with the dietary customs of the time, often led to chronic health issues that would have made your divine life considerably less comfortable. This wasn't about scarcity. It was about the consequences of what was considered luxurious and healthy in ancient times. It's like being able to order anything you want off the menu, but everything on it secretly contributes to a future health crisis. One of the most persistent and painful issues, as hinted at previously, was severe dental wear and disease. While the peasants suffered from sand in their bread, the royal bakers, even with finer milling techniques, couldn't eliminate all grit. Additionally, the pharaoh's diet was rich in carbohydrates from bread and beer, and often included large amounts of honey and dates, which contributed to tooth decay. Mummified remains consistently show abscesses, cavities, and severely abraded teeth, sometimes worn down to the pulp. Imagine the agony of chronic tooth pain, compounded by infections, perhaps even spreading to the jaw, all while you're expected to maintain a serene, divine demeanor during elaborate rituals. It's a divine smile that probably hurt a lot. The royal diet often included a significant amount of meat, especially from cattle, fowl, and fish from the Nile. While this provided protein, an excessively rich diet, combined with a largely sedentary lifestyle focused on ceremonial duties rather than strenuous physical labor, could lead to various metabolic issues. Conditions like gout, characterized by excruciating joint pain, are believed by some historians to have affected certain pharaohs, exacerbated by a diet rich in purines from red meat and beer. Imagine having gout flare ups while trying to ascend the step to a temple or maintain a regal posture on your throne for hours. A common historical truth about the pharaoh's diet is their reliance on beer. This wasn't the high alcohol craft beer you might find today. It was a thick, nutritious, low alcohol staple often consumed in large quantities by all levels of society, including royalty. While providing calories and some nutrients, excessive consumption could contribute to issues like obesity and potentially, though debated by scholars, liver problems over a lifetime. It was safer than water from the Nile, but it wasn't without its own set of health consequences. Historians still widely debate the exact alcohol content and the precise role of beer in the pharaoh's daily diet. The abundance of sweets, primarily honey and dates, also played a role in the pharaoh's less than perfect health. Sugar, in any form, contributes to tooth decay, and ancient Egyptians didn't have toothbrushes or fluoride. These sweet treats were a luxury, a symbol of their immense wealth, but they came at the cost of their oral health. Imagine having access to all the dessert you could ever want, but knowing each bite brings you closer to another agonizing dental abscess. A fascinating, yet often overlooked, detail is the potential for foodborne illnesses even within the royal household. Despite the best efforts of royal chefs and food preparers, the lack of modern refrigeration and sanitation methods meant that food spoilage was a constant risk. Contaminated meat, unwashed produce, or impure water could lead to bouts of dysentery, parasitic infections, and other gastrointestinal distress. Imagine being the divine ruler, but suddenly struck down by a violent stomach bug, compromising your ability to perform your sacred duties or appear infallible. It's a very undignified way for a god to suffer. The ceremonial aspects of eating for a pharaoh might also have contributed to discomfort. Meals could be long, drawn out affairs, with specific rituals and etiquette to follow. There was less room for personal preference or quick, comfortable meals. Every bite was observed, every gesture part of a larger performance. This added a layer of rigidity even to something as fundamental as eating. Furthermore, while modern diets emphasize variety and balanced nutrition, the ancient Egyptian royal diet, for all its richness, might have lacked certain essential micronutrients or contained an overabundance of others, leading to subtle long term health issues that are harder to pinpoint from mummified remains. The overall picture is one of a privileged diet that, ironically, often led to its own unique set of ailments, sometimes far worse than those faced by the common populace who subsisted on simpler, perhaps healthier, fare. So, as you slowly drift into dreams, consider the pharaoh's royal diet. Far from a blissful culinary paradise, it was often a source of silent suffering, from chronic dental pain to potential metabolic disorders. It's a powerful reminder that even at the pinnacle of power and luxury, the fundamental realities of the human body and the limitations of ancient understanding meant that comfort was not always guaranteed, and sometimes even divine indulgence could be a source of persistent pain. Let's gently return to the demanding world of ancient Egypt and the life of a pharaoh. We've explored the burdens of their divine bodies and their challenging diets. Tonight, we'll delve into the ultimate, inescapable task that awaited every pharaoh burial blight. The afterlife's awkward prep. You might think that once you die, your worries are over, but for an Egyptian pharaoh, death was just the beginning of a meticulously planned, incredibly involved, and often deeply unsettling process designed to ensure eternal life. Imagine yourself, the pharaoh, having lived a life of immense power and constant pressure. Now, your earthly reign is over, but your work is far from done. In fact, for your attendants, it's just beginning. The moment your last breath leaves your body, a complex, sacred, and often messy process known as mummification begins. This wasn't a quick burial, it was a 70-day ordeal, a meticulous transformation of your physical form designed to preserve your body so that your K life force and Bia personality could recognize it and return, ensuring your eternal existence. It's like being the guest of honor at the most elaborate, decades long post mortem spa treatment, but you're no longer conscious to enjoy it. The process itself, while performed by skilled embalmers, was anything but dignified for the deceased. First, your brain would be removed, often through the nostrils, using long, hooked instruments. Then, a large incision would be made in your left side to remove all your internal organs, your stomach, intestines, liver, and lungs. Only your heart, believed to be the seat of intelligence and emotion, was left in place. These removed organs would then be separately dried and placed into specialized canopic jars, each protected by a specific deity. Imagine the absolute indignity of this process, even if you were unconscious. It's a bit like having your entire internal system meticulously catalogued and stored in separate containers. After the evisceration, your body would be packed and covered in natron salt, a natural desiccant, for about 40 days. This incredibly drying substance would remove all moisture from your tissues, preventing decay. You'd essentially be a very important, very desiccated piece of jerky for over a month. The smell, even with perfumes and incense, must have been overwhelming for the embalmers and attendants. This was not a quick, gentle drying process. It was a long, chemical transformation. A common historical truth about mummification is that it was not solely a religious act, it was a deeply practical one, based on empirical observation of how bodies decayed in the dry desert. However, the meticulous rituals and spells associated with each step elevated it to a sacred art. Your success in the afterlife depended on the perfect execution of this complex procedure. Historians still debate the specific techniques and materials used by different mummification workshops, but the general principles remain consistent for millennia. A fascinating yet often overlooked detail is the potential for accidents or imperfections during the mummification process. Despite their expertise, embalmers were still human. Sometimes, a body might not be perfectly preserved, or an organ might be inadvertently damaged, while the pharaoh wouldn't know. Such imperfections could cause anxiety among the priests, as a flawed mummification might jeopardize the pharaoh's eternal journey. Imagine dedicating your entire earthly life to preparing for the afterlife, only for a clumsy embalmer to accidentally mess up your eternal plans. That would be the ultimate post-mortem annoyance. Once fully desiccated, your body would be carefully cleaned, plumped with linen, and treated with resins and oils to restore a more lifelike appearance. Then came the extensive bandaging, a complex art form in itself. Thousands of feet of linen bandages would be meticulously wrapped around your body, layer upon layer, often with amulets and protective charms placed between the layers to provide magical protection on your journey through the underworld. This could take days, performed by skilled priests chanting spells and prayers. It's the ultimate full body wrap, designed not for relaxation, but for eternal security. The preparation of your burial chamber and sarcophagus was also an ongoing, awkward chore. Even after your tomb was built, the inner sanctum had to be ready. Your sarcophagus, often carved from massive blocks of granite or quartzite, was not just a fancy coffin. It was a protective shell designed to house and safeguard your mummified body for eternity. Transporting these massive stone coffins into the tomb and maneuvering them into place was an engineering feat in itself, often requiring hundreds of men and immense logistical coordination. Imagine the colossal effort just to get your final bed into your eternal bedroom. The sheer volume of grave goods to be interred with you was another logistical nightmare. From furniture and chariots to food offerings and elaborate jewelry, your tomb needed to be fully stocked to provide for your needs in the afterlife. Every item had to be catalogued, protected, and then carefully placed within the tomb. This process could take months, even years, after your death, with attendants working tirelessly to ensure your eternal comfort. It's like moving into your new house, but you need to bring absolutely everything you might ever conceivably need for all eternity. And you're not there to supervise. So, as you slowly drift into dreams, consider the Pharaoh's awkward, demanding preparation for the afterlife. Beyond the grandeur of their tombs lay a physical transformation that was both sacred and profoundly undignified, a meticulous process designed to ensure eternal life, but at a very human cost. It's a powerful reminder that even in death, the life of a pharaoh was anything but simple, demanding a final, arduous performance that ensured their place in the cosmic order for all time. Let's now gently ease into the final chapter of our quiet journey through the extraordinary and often surprisingly difficult lives of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. We've explored their divine burdens, endless routines, the crushing weight of their eternal preparations, the perils of palace intrigue, their human frailties, the demands of war and economy, and the awkward reality of their post mortem journey. Tonight, we'll reflect on their lasting impact, the quiet whispers that remain in the desert sands, and their enduring place in history, the echo of the throne, legacy, and longing for peace. Imagine, for a final moment, the Pharaoh, whose life was a ceaseless performance, a blend of immense power and profound responsibility. What remains of such a life, centuries and millennia later? Their most undeniable legacy, of course, are the colossal monuments that still pierce the desert sky. The pyramids, temples, and obelisks stand as eternal testaments to their ambition, their wealth, and their absolute command over human and material resources. These aren't just piles of stone, they are architectural prayers, frozen in time, designed to echo their divine authority through eternity. As you look at them, you can almost hear the rhythmic chant of the laborers, the clang of tools, and the solemn pronouncements of the priests, all orchestrated by the will of a single divine ruler. It's like seeing the ultimate long-lasting billboard for a career that defined an entire civilization. Beyond the physical structures, the pharaohs left behind a legacy of political and administrative innovation. They established and maintained one of the world's first enduring centralized states, with a sophisticated bureaucracy, a complex legal system, and an efficient system of resource management that allowed a vast population to thrive for thousands of years. The very concept of a divine kingship, while incredibly demanding for the ruler, provided a stable, unifying force for an entire civilization. They laid the groundwork for future empires, showing how a single, absolute authority could organize vast resources and direct the collective will of a people towards monumental goals. Historians still widely debate the true level of daily administrative involvement of individual pharaohs versus the power of their viziers and local governors. but the overall system was undeniably a product of pharaonic rule. Their unwavering focus on the afterlife and their personal quest for immortality shaped not only their tombs, but also the spiritual beliefs and artistic expressions of an entire culture. The intricate funerary texts, the elaborate tomb paintings depicting their journey through the underworld, and the very practice of mummification itself all became cornerstones of Egyptian civilization. The pharaoh's path to divinity in the afterlife was, in essence, the blueprint for the spiritual aspirations of all Egyptians. Their pursuit of eternal life left an indelible mark on religious thought and artistic style that resonated for millennia. It's like the ultimate personal brand, designed to last not just a lifetime, but eternity. And it influenced everyone who came after you. However, the echo of the throne also carries the quiet whisper of their personal toll. As we've explored, the pharaoh's life was far from an easy one. The divine burden, the endless rituals, the constant threats from within and without, the physical ailments, and the profound isolation inherent in their position, these were the unseen costs of their majestic power. The mummified remains, stripped bare by modern science, reveal not just grandeur, but also the scars of disease, the wear of age, and sometimes the evidence of violent ends. These are the silent testaments to the human frailty beneath the divine facade, reminding us that even living gods felt pain, fear, and fatigue. The pharaoh's legacy also includes the wars fought and the treaties signed, shaping the geopolitical landscape of the ancient Near East. Their military prowess and diplomatic cunning influenced alliances, trade routes, and the very balance of power in the ancient world. While often bloody and resource intensive, these conflicts and negotiations ensured Egypt's survival, prosperity, and influence as a dominant regional force for millennia. Their decisions on the battlefield and at the negotiating table sent ripples across ancient civilizations, the echoes of which can still be traced in the historical records. For the pharaohs themselves, what did they long for amidst all the power and pressure? Perhaps, ultimately, a longing for peace. Not just peace for their kingdom, but personal peace. Peace from the endless rituals. Peace from the constant threat of assassination. Peace from the burden of divine responsibility. And finally, peace in a perfectly secured afterlife. They yearned for the undisturbed rest that their elaborate tombs promised, a tranquil eternity far removed from the earthly struggles that defined their reigns. It's the ultimate aspiration for anyone in a high-pressure job, a quiet, secure retirement where no one can bother you for all time. Their stories, pieced together from fragmented inscriptions, royal decrees, and the silent evidence of their mummified remains, continue to fascinate and instruct us. They offer a unique window into the challenges of absolute power, the complexities of human ambition, and the enduring human quest for meaning, even when that meaning is wrapped in ritual and aimed at eternity. The pharaohs, in their struggles and their triumphs, remind us that even those at the pinnacle of human achievement were, at their core, intensely human, navigating the demanding realities of their world as best they could. Now, as the stories of the pharaohs fade into the quiet hum of your room, let your thoughts settle. Allow the intricate details of their lives, their burdens, and their enduring legacy to drift gently from your mind. Feel the softness of your pillow, the gentle rhythm of your breath. There's no rush, nowhere to be but here, in this peaceful moment. Just relax and let sleep softly claim you, knowing that your burdens, unlike a pharaoh's, can truly be set aside for the night.